Finished the structure course outline, and now we're going to get into some play and explain. We're going to go through some hands today that Fabian has played just the other day. So let's go ahead and kick it off.
All right.
Button clicker, huh?
Mm-hmm. Good friend.
Fi fi Finding some soft games.
Yeah, low rake do at 1K to play someone like that.
Super, super low rake. So
Um,
5-4 in the right here. I imagine we're going to be check raising this something like 25-30% of the time or so, maybe slightly higher.
yeah, I'll probably go closer to like 50. We don't check raise as much on a king high unpaired as a lower unpaired, but we also use a smaller sizing around 42%, I believe, for check raising. So that also increases the frequency a bit. So the only open that we can have here really is 5-4. So I would probably check raise it a bit above 50 overall, and then rest call.
The club one is nice as well.
Oh, what's happening here?
I think you're resizing your tables.
Should we pause recording? Redo?
That's fine. Just ready? Three, two, one. All right,
Yeah.
so we go for this that small check raise size and pretty good turn.
Yeah, I think the sizing was slight misclick because my hotkeys wasn't working, but still fine.
Can you pause here on the turn actually? So this strikes me as a turn where we would like a slightly smaller size because we still do have a bunch of flop value that likes to continue to barrel.
Yeah,
Um, but if I have king three suited, if I have pocket twos, I think I kind of prefer the two-thirds pot here over the full pot. Like, what are your thoughts between those two?
yeah. I think since I mean, in general, straighting turns you want to go 67%, and also it's a ace turn that will favor him in terms of he can have ace king, kings, aces, and stuff like that we can't have. Um, so I think this is just a slight mistake for me from using pot here. Obviously, it's not a big mistake either way. But yeah, I would like to see myself using two-thirds here in general, so I can keep value betting the thinner value. Um, but yeah, it's okay.
Also, a couple other quick notes on this. So there are some ace X hands that I think we'd like to be able to bet here, and we use the size we can't really.
Yeah,
And then one more thing too. I do think that you will want to occasionally check raise check some 5-4s. And I kind of like the idea of doing the club non-diamond 5-4s because his bet frequency should increase when you don't have a diamond. And then you also unblock the backdoor floats that would want to stab. So of our 5-4s, this feels like one of the nicer ones to go for a check raise check.
yeah, for sure.
But, always good to try and drive value when you have good hands.
Yeah, I still assume it was a fair chunk of betting with those suits. And on river, I think I would play a block and a all-in split here, blocking my weaker two pairs, potentially some of my ace-x. If I didn't go pot and turn, I could probably bet ace-x, but now I can't really. So blocking mainly weaker two pairs, jamming mainly just sets and straights. Don't really have any two pair. I think I can jam here. And this hand with straight unblocking all the pairs. I think almost always jam, occasionally in the block size, but mainly jam with 5-4 here. Um,
So just some thoughts on that. Does does Sev 2 is really like jam here? Because there's going to be 16 combos 5-4, and then obviously, pocket threes, pocket kings, pocket aces. Like I know that you're going to be ahead of more hands that call you than you're going to be behind, but it kind of feels to me like you block like lots of the two pair hands that can call a jam. Like it starts to feel almost thin with pocket twos.
mhm.
So is there any merit here in going like block and pot rather than the strategy you're describing? Or do you think it's really important to have the jam size?
I think specifically for 5-4, it's really important to have the jam size to get that EV in general. And in general, when you don't have a jam size in river, you lose a fair bit of EV when you have certain hands that really want to jam. Here, I would still assume deuces and trees can jam, and then we have a decent amount of straights as well. So it's a fairly narrow range, but in terms of not losing that EV, I personally would have a jam size here, even though it's a very narrow range. I'm jamming, and then I'm just gonna pick sort of my bottom range with the straight blocker hands for the jam part, and then some of the bit worse blockers for the block size
Like
in terms of
six
splitting.
five. 6-5, 6-4 being our main bluffs in the spot, and then maybe like the ones with the higher diamond like to use the blocks bluff, but the rest use jam.
Yeah, that's roughly what I would be doing here.
I assume the imposition calls want to be based around when he goes that big, just based around having like two pair plus basically.
Yeah, and
Maybe a
then on
little
the
bit of some ace four, ace five. Yeah.
yeah, very important to block the nuts there when I go all in. For him, from his perspective, like he probably should fold some of his worst two pairs more than something like ace four, ace five on river. And then on the left with top and bottom facing a block, this in general top and bottom is going to be our highest frequency like trap or call with the amount of two pairs we can have. Queen Jack mainly going to be check raise, top bottom two mainly check raise, and then top and bottom in general more a low frequency check raise and more short call. So I'm mainly calling top and bottom here, occasionally check raise.
And these are our slam dunk check calls down,
Yeah.
typically. Yeah. Got some leading going on, huh? I see why this pool's running.
Yeah.
Overbet, obviously, playing range at a pure check call.
Yeah.
This is kind of a weird size. This is 175. It's kind of a weird size.
Yeah. But still just calling it on.
Yeah. Not our favorite river, but still obviously a very, very nice bluff catcher.
The only size we would think about it would be a jam.
It's a brutal spot with threes. Feels like really close.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure in game. I probably did.
Can you pause?
Go
Sorry,
back.
just pause. No, pause for a second, but keep talking.
Okay. So yeah, I wasn't sure what to do on the flop against his sizing with pocket trees with a spade. We do have the diamond, so we block some of the backdoor bluffs as well. So I think I did mix in game because I was quite unsure with the spade. I would definitely fold without the spade. So I did just mix, but it could be very cuspy to be just a pure fold on flop against his sizing.
Yeah, so my instincts are whenever I think it's close, it's basically always a fold
Mm-hmm.
because I seem to always overfloat the flop pretty much in every scenario. So this seems close to me, so it feels like maybe a fold. But that said, like your turnouts are really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you hit the either of the offsuit threes on the turn, just a really, really nice spot for you.
Yeah.
Um and with the spade, it feels like yeah, maybe threes, no spade seems like you can let it go, but with the spade probably enough. On the right, on the left, though, if you could press play again real quick. So this is kind of interesting. His size here, just to press pause. So like, I would anticipate straights just primarily jamming. And so when he uses this size, is like 75%, I think. When he uses the size, this feels kind of like, you know, like either like an overpair or like weak two pair type hand to me. Do we think that we're maybe in the vicinity of trying to get some value with Queen Seven here, facing specifically this size?
I would assume we need a bit stronger than that, like a Queen Nine, Queen Jack to be raising. And then also this question: what size do we raise to? Do we raise jam or do we raise slightly smaller? I think this feels cuspy to me. For me, since it went so big on turn, I would be surprised if he would still be value betting something like Ace Queen here on this type of river, since I can have King 10 quite easily. So I think this size to me feels more like either overpair or the weaker two pairs, maybe even stronger two pairs. I don't know how he would split the sizes here on river. So this feels cuspy to raise. So for me, it feels like it's the snap call.
Is there much difference? Queen Nine and Queen Seven feel like pretty identical hands to me, like very very similar hands to me. I don't think he
Mm-hmm.
ever has Queen Nine, so I think he this definitely makes sense for him to have Queen Seven. I guess like Queen Jack is nice for him in this size.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, okay. I just think we're getting to that point where we're getting very close to raise territory when you face a smaller size.
yeah,
And this is also important to know, like, once you play someone a bit longer, how they're splitting the river sizes, because that might really impact the way that, you're looking to pick your bluffs out or your value bets out. I guess the pretty clear bluff hand here is Jack 10, right?
Yeah, Jack 10, maybe even some as strong as Queen 10, but I think Queen 10 would be used more against a larger river size. They went like 150% pot, so something like Jack 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. A hand that never opens, just going for it.
Well, pretty good bluff on river, I think, but yeah. So pocket 10's high frequency, 4 bet, a bit less since we won 50 BPD, but mainly gonna be 4 betting still at his stacked up.
Yeah, tens does like four betting in most of the stuff we've seen.
Mixing some check
And when
back
we
with 8-7, more so betting when I have a spade. Having the club is kind of nice to see bet as well, but wouldn't pure check or pure bet 8-7 on flop, so just mixing in some check backs to bluff later streets.
so under 200 blinds, I think we pure call any pair we four bet basically.
Mhm.
Um, but what's the point where we start to maybe consider folding tens there if he just jams like 250,
I, th-
230?
I think since he's still supposed to jam ace king off and some suited wheels, that it's still just gonna be a call. I don't think we get to fold
Well,
pocket pairs.
well, what about 300? I mean, there's a line obviously, right?
I still see what I've seen, whatever
500, a
five
million.
500 probably. Yeah, I think still at 300 you call off tens if you do four bet,
Oh
but
my,
the frequency drops a lot for four betting that
that
deep.
that feels bad, man.
Yeah, it does.
All right, 8-7 seems like a nice time to go for our 58% pot delay, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. I would bet it uh, again at a mix a bit more than checking, but occasionally checking back again to have some more double delay bluffs. In general, a lot of the delay bluffs will be just be at a mix in general. So mixing
yeah,
in
yeah.
some checks with most of them, almost all of them, even or better draws with partial of them.
Seven of hearts probably likes a little bit more double delay as well.
Yeah, and for sure double delaying betting river if he checks.
You split here or play single size?
I
I play
think
single
I
size
play
on that.
single size here. I would play a split on say a 10-6 queen river. Uh, yeah, but the most other I play single size.
Got you.
So ace jack gonna mix in some four bets, mainly call. Looks like I'm four betting.
Ace Jack and Ace Queen are the four bets that felt the most weird transitioning over to from the pre-strategy to the NASA strategy.
Yeah, it's also because NASA don't use ace queen off at 100 BB, but then it starts using it deeper to 4-bet fold. But some of the other
Yeah.
ranges would have ace queen off as a 4-bet call at 100 BB, but NASA just doesn't use ace queen off at all. And use something like ace jack suited, for example, 100 BB would feel very weird for me to 4-bet call ace jack suited, but you know. And then ace queen 3. So yeah, in general, the non-paired ace high boards, we can have a check back range in 4-bet pots. Our better ace x mainly going to be betting. Something like ace queen is probably even just a pure bet. Ace jack maybe occasionally check back, since he's supposed to have almost all ace queen at the full frequency here. But yeah, mainly betting ace jack for 20% here.
It's kind of interesting. Like Ace Jack's obviously stronger than a hand like Ace Ten or Ace Nine, but Ace Jack Jack of Spades does block a lot more of the floats, right? Like King Jack of Spades, Jack Ten of
Yeah,
Spades, even King Jack off if he calls that versus four bet. So, um, you know, I think probably high frequency bet, but some check does feel kind of nice.
yeah. And then on turn, again, in general, on when we're barreling turning for pots, our frequency is going to be very high. This turn strikes me a bit lower frequency barrel, but still going to be fairly high frequency barrel. We can still block bet ace king, ace 10, all our two pairs sets at a high frequency. So I'm mainly, again, almost going to be pure betting ace jack. I will be trapping something like pocket aces um, at a high frequency, maybe queens as well. But in general, I'm mainly going to bet my stronger ace x, my two pairs, at almost full frequency here. and just occasionally check back some of them. So ace jack here, I'm probably pure betting for a probably between 20-25% sizing.
Yep, I would do the same. Seems good.
And 5-9
Not
just a easy double delay.
basically repping like Queen X kind of hands here.
Yeah. It's kind of nice in the double delays because it's just very natural bottom of range or pure bluffing in general. Not
Yeah,
really
yeah.
much giving up. And he had made a good call with ace 4. The 4 diamonds pretty nice there on blocking a lot of my bluffs.
Yeah, when you have one of the suit of the three flush, and an ace, when your kicker is the suit of the board, you're basically always going to be check calling in double delay.
Yeah.
At least check calling, I should say.
So 10-9, definitely a pair board. We want to have a reasonable amount of checking. But of course, flush draw is going to be mainly betting again. Other position in 3-bet pots going to be more equity driven. So when you have better equity with your semi bluffs and bluffs, you're going to be betting them at a high frequency, and sort of high, like a high medium card, maybe a bit low card, are going to be betting about a bit more than, say, if I had something like with two high diamonds. In general, going to do more checking. So I'm mainly betting queen seven, occasionally checking to check call, and maybe even check raise occasionally, but yeah, mainly betting for a 30% sizing. So again, same thing as on flop. I'm gonna be mainly betting my higher equity bluffs here with poor showdown. Sizing wise, in general, go 67% pot. Since we're slightly deeper, could also just I could just press my GO2 button here and bet a bit larger. But in general, gonna be two thirds or slightly bigger for a GO sizing here. And I'm pure betting queen seven of diamonds here. I think not really doing any checking whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean this hand doesn't really make sense to check, right? Because if you check, what do you do versus a bet?
Yeah,
And typically when you have the equity threshold to be able to bet profitably, but you can't really check call, those hands almost always end up in pure bet because what do you do otherwise?
yeah. And then on the left, a 9-9 straight board, so it's gonna be a either 67, 82% board. Sort of my weakest ace side with the overcard to the 9 and not backdoor flush draw. I definitely managed to do some betting, but not very much. Probably a low frequency bet, and more so bet something like ace deuce with ace of spades at a higher frequency. Um, but yeah, occasionally betting ace 10 on flop, but mainly be checking back.
It's funny. I looked at like almost this exact board today in the course in one of my turn check raise spots I was analyzing. It's kind of funny how like you look at a spot and then all of a sudden like that spot just starts popping over. You're like, oh, I've looked at this.
That does seem to happen quite often actually. So yeah, I do a low frequency bet on left. And looks like I went geometrical on turn, a bit larger than 67% pot.
This strikes me like a really bad triple barrel candidate on the right. Like this is
Yeah,
going to be a bet check almost for sure if we.
yeah. And on left, I don't think I'm ever barreling with this much showdown. This hand is more to barrel, say, a 7-8 turn or a spade turn, and occasionally we can turn an ace for some value. But yeah, I'm never barreling sort of
Let's
this strong ace high.
let's let's just pause for a second here. So I looked at a board where it was like 8-7-4 turn 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty surprised at some of the stuff that I saw from in position using a big turn barrel size, even one
Mm-hmm.
that's bigger than what we use. A lot of like turned pairs were betting. So like 8-7-4-6, like a bunch of 4x hands bet, a bunch of 6x hands bet.
Mm-hmm.
That feels really strange to me. Can obviously like big blind has to fold some 7x, some stronger 6x, and there are some hands that are like pair plus gutter you can get value from, but like is that a concept that you see a lot on these kinds of boards where like, you're more likely to kind of value bluff the middling hands? Maybe the idea is like in position just when they bet, they have so many of those straights on those straight playing turns, or like why do you think that happens that so many hands bet in that spot?
Well, it's sort of similar where you can see it sometimes on four flush turns, where you turn a lot of some of the weakest pairs into bluffs, even some fairly strong ones. So one of the reasons I assume is to also be able to have you know adequate amount of bluffs on rivers, and then some of the more middling hands like on a four straight. I assume some of it will get like better to fold, worse to call as well, depending like how strong the pair is, and some of the weaker pairs I assume is also just to turn into bluffs on later streets. But yeah, you definitely see that happening a lot on like the four straight, four flush, where you have a lot of like non-intuitive bets happening in the solver that can be quite hard to nail as a human.
Yeah, normally the straight spots feel better to play more polar.
Hmm.
And like I actually kind of prefer the way that like check raise plays in those situations because it's kind of easy
Mm.
to create your check raise strategy and be fairly balanced. But the barrels can be like quite weird.
Yeah,
Um, and it almost kind of goes back to like out of position tends to play more like quote unquote like good normal poker, whereas in position tends to like just get like really weird in some spots just because like certain hands can just bet that the big one can't really do anything about. Um, anyway, that's been my experience in a lot of spots, but we can continue.
yeah. So king queen nine, 67% board. Um, I mean, all of our gut shots will do so mixing. I feel like the higher 10x with no spade is gonna be more medium check back, probably around the flop frequency. So more like half the time betting, maybe a bit more. And then if I had something like a 10 deuce, I would bet a bit more. If I had a 10 plus a spade, I bet a bit more. So yeah, medium frequency betting flop with 10-7.
Yeah, then ace ten's obvious, just check down. But
Yeah,
with 10-7, yeah, it's funny how much we see that, how like in almost all of the spots, even like flush completes, you have like high flushes versus low kicker, or like straight completes, or flop gut shots, or like even just like betting your non-equity hands with a spade. It's so consistent how like the low kicker, you can just press play. There's nothing really,
yeah,
it's not important to pause here, but it's so consistent how like the low kicker hands really prefer to be your bluff candidates and the high kicker ones don't. And I just think that it kind of comes down to pair value,
yeah,
where when you have the low kicker, you're not really as concerned about having your equity blown off when you can't hit your three kicker, right? So,
yeah.
um, and 10-7 seems like a nice turn check. If you do bet, seems like you triple barrel quite often, but mainly check turn.
Yeah, it would be sort of the classic low frequency turn and then almost pure river or high frequency bet river. And then in bet check bet they also make for fairly good bluffs. But yeah, we face a block. So against a block, sometimes you will have to use unpaired hands against a block probe. So again, I would assume it would prefer having a lower kicker to be raising a unpaired 10i here. Because also since it's a straight on board, I wouldn't assume we would be using something like unpaired ace highs here. It's more about having the straight blocker to for unpaired hands to be raising. So trying some raising with 10-7 against a block seems fine to me, but again, I would prefer having a lower side card to be raising.
So just some thoughts on that really quick. So I feel like if this board was a little different, like let's just say for example, this board was Queen 9-5 for River King.
Mm.
Um, there it feels much better to raise high card hands. But in this spot, because the four is so low on the board, is it that bad to base our river raises around the four? I know like in a normal situation, if you bet on the bigger size, you definitely want to use the rivered card.
Hmm.
But in this one where it's just it's fifth pair, can't we still organize our raises around the four to some extent as our bluffs?
Yeah, that as well. But also since we're going to be having a fairly wide value range against block as well, in general the solver will use both. So some river 4x and then some unpaired holdings.
Around.
Uh, but yeah, occasional raise with 10-7 feels okay for me, but mainly folding. And on the left, just a easy fold with king 8 as well.
Tough spot in the button here.
Yeah, I'm probably trying to fix my hotkeys here. So facing 42% pot, I'm going to be calling all of my ace highs here. Also since it's a 4 low card, so we can turn some equity with our wheel aces as well. So I'm not really folding any ace highs here. So it's going to be a pure call. I'm not really going to be raising any of them for a check raise as well. It's going to be mainly pure calling all of them in general.
Feels cuspy, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe something specific like ace 6 could fold a bit, but
Well, ace six has to be better than ace three, right? Or no?
I mean it's like you can turn the wheel like the gut shot to the wheel with lower aces, so maybe that will change the preference of what ace you will call. But you also have an overcard to the 4 with a6. So, but in general, I feel like all the ace sizes against 42% would be a call, and against a larger size, maybe you will have to start folding some of your weakest ones.
And then when the bets get this small on the flop, we don't play turn leads.
Yeah, exactly. So it's mainly against over half pot sizings where I would lead my entire range. Since when they use a smaller sizing, it's going to be a bit more merged c-betting range, so they have plenty of 9x in the range, so we can't really lead entire range. Leading does happen, but then you have to sort of play a mixed strategy for leading turn, and I don't really want to do that, so I just range check. And yeah, just going to be folding now. Some of our ace size probably would have to call there, um, some like having an overcard to the 4 and then not blocking the straight draws. Maybe occasionally does call, like in ace 5, ace 6 maybe. But in general, all of our ace highs not mainly going to be folding.
Diamond is bad to have here too.
Yeah.
I like that you analyze it and then I just throw in a little suit knowledge, you know. You know, it is. I know like the suits are probably like the last thing to think about on like the chain, right? Like, do I want to have a bet range? Do I want to have a raise range? What's my value like? You know, what size is the value like? What are my bluff candidates? Which ones are, that whole line of thought. And suits tend to be towards the end.
Hmm.
But I do think that they're important and like help you kind of just like differentiate slightly where things might want to go a bit higher or lower. Um,
And also that's why I think it can be so useful to learn heads up again, because you have to think so deeply about blockers all the time, because all the wide ranges very different from say ring tighter ranges. So king 5-4, it's gonna be a bit lower frequency than other non-paired king highs. The lower king highs tend to be more closer to 60 or lower percent frequency, using 42% sizing. Just pure betting top two. If we ever would check a two pair here, it would be top and bottom, and that would be 10% or so check. Since it's a low frequency king high board, we probably would check some of our top and bottom. But yeah, in general, betting all our two pairs and definitely top two. Sure. So one straight available means pot size for the single size, and I don't think I ever want to check back this type of two pair. Some of the two pairs I would check back would be maybe some of the turned two pair, like an 8-5, 8-4. But in general, the king x two pairs here, since there's only one straight available, I'm still pure betting all of them. I think maybe still a bit of the top and bottom would check, but yeah, in general, the better two pairs I'm pure betting here. And yeah, 82% board on the left, and both having the spade and the diamond makes for a fairly good c bet. Even though we have decent showdown, still want to be betting this type of hand class at like a medium frequency or so. It's quite nice to have both the spade and the diamond for betting.
yeah, as the size gets bigger, it's a little more important to have the relevant blockers.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think like the second best high card hand with like a medium kicker tends to get into some of your highest frequency checks, but that one specifically makes a lot of sense to bet.
Yeah. So on the left, we do have to float some of our like weak offsuit hands on a rainbow board, since we can't really have the offsuit backdoor flush draws anymore. But I assume it's more something like 8-9, 8-9, mainly Jack 9, and 7-6 is a bit too weak to defend against 30%.
This
Um,
this 7-6 also seems kind of terrible with the suits, right?
yep,
We don't block we block no 3x, and then we block a lot of bluffs. Like I would way rather check raise here with like 5-4 of diamonds.
yep,
Well, maybe three that pretty flop, but like 6 deuce of diamonds even, or like 5-4 with a diamond, or like 9-8 with a club or things like that,
Yeah,
or check raise or check call.
yeah. So I think I'm just pure folding 7-6, but it feels on the close side.
Some nice trips here on the right. How are you approaching the check raise? Having the heart versus not having the heart here. Like, which way does it make you inclined to go? Well, we're facing a very small bet size, but like generally speaking, I assume that with the heart we feel a little less need to check raise. But how are you approaching it?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. So in general, sometimes when you have trips, it's like you want to check raise your strongest trips, more the middling ones, more flatting occasional check raise, and then some of your like weakest ones with like the unblocker for to all these floats, like a 10 deuce here, um, would check raise a bit more than 10-9, especially 10-9 with the 9 of hearts, because we block some potential calls. So something like 10-9, it's more lower frequency check raise, probably still decent frequency, like 30-40%, rest call, but yeah.
Or these turns are always weird with 10-9.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's gonna be kind of easy, right? You have a ton of aces here, so if things get too crazy, you can let go.
yeah,
Um, so this is kind of interesting. So river, usually when we river boats where we pair the other card, it's nice check raise candidate. But in this spot specifically, still kind of is, right? We unblock a lot of hands that could bluff.
mm.
Um, and yeah, I think. What do you think? Check raise small here. What do you think?
To me, it feels more like a pure, like just a pure bet, and mainly we're just gonna use some of our ace X to check raise. Um, yeah, I think it's also very
Unblock.
hard to get enough value that will bet call with a 10. Like sure we unblock a lot of bluffs, but um, yeah, he should be trapping a fair amount of ace X on turn as well. So
Unblocking the bluffs though has to play some kind of role here, right?
yeah,
Or do you not think so?
I think in general, but in general, the double paired situations, you're mainly only gonna be check raising, like the better boat. So this is more just a pure bet, and I think on double pairs I prefer using pot as a single size. So I will just potting here. You can also block bet and block bet some king highs for value, but in general I just like playing pot only here and more a bit more polar. And 10x in general gonna be a pure bet, and ace x high frequency bet occasionally check raise.
That all makes sense to me. Yeah.
And then yeah, on the left,
I'm gonna run it though because usually you'll have some tens in your check range. This feels like your best one. I'll run this on the side while we go along.
mhm. Okay, so on the left, so the Broadway king high boards on non-pairs a lot higher frequency than the one I talked about earlier with the lower cards. So even something like 10-7, no backdoor flush draw is still going to do a fair amount of betting. A bit less than the flop frequency, but it's still going to be a like a 60-ish% bet on flop in general. But yeah, I do check back. And I go for the pot on the right. And then for the lazy betting here,
Don't we use more 82% on the right?
on the right,
80, 80. Yeah.
I think on double pairs it's pot in general, but it's very close.
Okay. Okay.
And then yeah, then on the left, so first delay C betting, you definitely, even though delay C betting is a bit more polar in nature, we definitely will want to delay C bet some second pairs, and it tends to be the more vulnerable second pair you have, the more you want to be betting them. So 10 here doesn't feel like as vulnerable enough where we want to be betting our second pairs at a much higher frequency. So 10x in general going to be lower frequency bet, and mainly the stronger 10x betting a bit more, but still occasional bet with 10-7 is probably fine, but probably mainly just check it still. And yeah, easy value bet for double delay. And a
And
pretty
if he
nice hand.
raises,
Yeah, exactly. Praying for the raise.
dealer, I'd like to wager all of it.
Mm. So on the right, so this is a recreational, but anyway, the queen high straight boards, 42% sizing, a bit higher frequency than the other straight boards, also since we use a smaller size. So you see a lot more betting of your weaker top pairs and second pairs. So, and again, something like a unblocker top pair like queen two suited would be a higher frequency bet than something like this, queen six, queen seven. But still a fair amount of betting with your weaker top pairs on these type of straight boards. and then pure checking my weaker top pairs on turn since I think I'm playing overbet here or pot, so just a very polar turn strategy, so only really betting my stronger top pairs are better for value on turn and pure checking the rest.
Seems good.
And then river, assume we can still value bet most of our queen x here, if not all of them, but definitely not a great river.
Yeah, I'm anticipating him to have a jack or an eight here very often.
Yeah.
So seems good.
So pair flop brick turn means we're playing 42 for the probe size. So that means we can protection bet more in general, and especially on a paired flop or a paired turn. So something like our better 4x here definitely gets in there for the 42% sizing to block bet a lot of rivers. So betting a bit more with my stronger 4x and checking a bit more with the weaker ones, and maybe also betting a bit on my weakest 4x that unblocks any potential floats, like unblocking the straight draw flush draws can bet also. But yeah, a healthy mix of betting for 42% for turn probing here.
So I feel like I've gone through so many strategies on the turn here in this spot. Like I've done small sizes, I've done big sizes, I've been all over the place. So I feel like I don't have like a really great grasp of this spot with the small sizes. Um, what are your thoughts on like the two playing two thirds here, or do you think it's just obviously you think it's better to play the small size or you wouldn't be doing it, but do you think it's an acceptable strategy to play two thirds here?
Yeah, I mean the EV difference is very very close with the sizes. So it's more like you can pick a size you're more comfortable using and you study that. It's not going to make a big difference in terms of EV. One thing I say though I like about using the smaller sizings in general is sort of what I covered when you face a turn probe. The hardest like threshold for calling is always against the smaller sizings because you have to make so many uncomfortable floats. Like some king high queen highs that seems very weak will have to float even on a non-paired flop and turn. So it's maybe more from a like an exploit standpoint. I feel like population struggles a bit more to find enough calls and raises against the smaller sizes. So that's why I like to use it. But the EV difference is so close, you can just pick 6 7 or full pot here, whatever you feel most comfortable in game to play with. And the EV difference is so small for the turn probing sizes. It doesn't really matter how much. I think for me, I like it more from that standpoint that it can make it a bit harder for imposition.
By the way, I'm almost done with this sim on Ace 10
Mm.
10, and this is a crazy one. Um, it mainly uses one third pot turn C bet on the
Mm.
double pair,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it goes check check, it mainly uses one third pot on the river, and no, sorry, it uses two thirds pot river, but you basically have almost all your tens in position, and you have like a lot of your aces,
Mm-hmm.
and your main turn bets like your weak aces bet turn on Ace 10 10 ace,
Yep.
but your higher kicker ones check almost
Mm-hmm.
always. And then 10-9 is pure bet with mainly pot.
Okay.
But but 150 gets used here like a decent like it would be better to play block in 150 than to play
Pot only.
block and pot.
How about
Block
pot
and
only?
pot,
Yeah.
yeah. As pot, I mean, block gets used too much. Like 34% of your hands like block.
Yeah, I assume that's mainly the king highs for value,
It's
or
mainly king highs, but you also put like a lot of 10x and even ace x into block.
okay, makes sense.
Okay, and carry on. Because if you block, he's supposed to raise a 10. So you get the same value with an
Okay.
ace. Anyway.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So queen high with backdoor, easy call. I think all queen highs here are pure calling. Against his sizing on the left, and I would check raise some high-low queen highs with the queen of clubs more so than having the weaker club. A bit better barrel opportunities, and also can make some decent value on rivers or as well. But yeah, all queen highs pure defending, I think. And
After after these two hands, let's take a quick break and come back. But we
uh,
can finish them out.
okay. So on the right, so fairly high frequency board, but still a fair amount of checking. So in general, when you have trips on the paired boards, the traps you do is more sort of the medium to weaker trips. You don't really trap the stronger trips ever. So this is sort of the class I would occasionally check back like 10-15% of the time. but still mainly bet. But this is definitely a hand class where I would want to occasionally check back to have some trips in my check back
Because
range.
yeah, because you want to give yourself the chance to stack the worst trips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you check back, you basically lose that opportunity.
Yeah.
Or you, I mean, it's more likely you lose that opportunity, I should say.
Yeah.
This is
So,
old school too. Checking that back is old school.
the wicked trips, like the weak top
Yeah.
pairs.
So let me just talk about the queen seven on the left. So one thing I found in the flush spots, your bluffs tend to be a little less linear, and it just tends
Mm-hmm.
to more be around having one of the suit. So, we called a very small flop bet. So I definitely think we have plenty of other hands that are weaker. But I think whenever you see a three flush spot, the anything with the suit's getting in there. But just to start off with, like the way that I'd play my range here, I would play like a chunk of block, primarily ace X, and then I think we're gonna want to go with a 80, 82% or pot second size. We're gonna mainly bluff in the bigger size with a few bluffs in the smaller ones that maybe some of the ones that don't have a club. Like if we
Mm-hmm.
floated like five deuce of diamonds or something on the flop, or five three of diamonds on the flop, something like that. Um, and then when we do have a club, we're probably going to mainly like a hand like this is probably going to do a good portion of checking. When it bluffs, it will mainly bluff for the big size, and then it will occasionally mix in the block.
Yep. Completely agree. I'm pretty sure I mixed only the bigger bet here, and then the rest check in game. Feels like a bit like for the block, it feels a bit is strong, right? Too, since I have more like a medium side card to go block for this type of holding. This just feels like an occasional big bet and rest check to me. And
Kind of
ace
interesting with queen seven. What do you think?
feels like a pretty good call hand on maybe occasional raise. Maybe also make some folds, but the seven of clubs does unblock his bet check bets, block some value. So I think mainly call, occasional check raise, occasional check fold. So I went for the occasional check raise.
Wouldn't it be better to use some paired hands there, like queen ten, with a queen of clubs or jack ten, jack of clubs?
I
Do we
assume.
need to go? Do
Mm,
we need to go that far down into our queens?
I assume some of them happen at a low frequency. Maybe not my exact one. Maybe it would be more a high low one hand that does happen. And then some river of 10x with the club makes us for a very good check raise as well. But yeah, I'm also concerned about my frequency there, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm hitting some hands at some frequency, so I'm not, under bluffing in general.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if you just use queen ten, jack ten with the club, you're probably not going to find enough bluffs there.
Yeah, and then bet check bet with 8 then.
Right around the bottom of value there, right?
Yeah, it's around second pair or better. Maybe a bit of few better third pairs, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess like in most of those check raise lines, I feel like I've never struggled too much to get the raise bluffs in.
Mm.
So I usually come at it from the perspective of trying to avoid overdoing it. So I guess like it kind of depends on like what your baseline is as a player, right?
Yeah, and
And
my
that's something. Go ahead.
yeah, my baseline in general was for the river racing. I was always a bit below, so I'm just putting in like a mental effort to, even if it doesn't feel like the optimal hand to use, I just throw a little bit in there, so I get my frequencies up a bit. So yeah,
I guess like the way that I look at it is when two bets go in and I want to have raised bluffs, I feel like I need to have paired hands.
okay,
That's just
yeah,
like a general rule. I know that's not like a,
yeah,
but as a general rule, that's a good rule, I think.
yeah. You'd be more right than wrong. Versus using an unpaired hand, you're more likely to be wrong.
In when you face just one bet, you usually need to use unpaired.
Yeah, especially the smaller size. So
A
occasional.
six.
Sorry,
Go
go
for it.
ahead.
I was gonna say, how often are you looking at bet versus check raise here or check call? But
Bit more betting when I have the heart. Not really betting much without the heart. With the heart and also check raising, prefer having the heart for check raise and check calling without the heart.
seems good. Ace deuce feels like a very nice check call hand,
Yeah, it's one of the better one, like ace deuce a6. Gonna be the check
and then
snaps.
ace six feels like a very nice check raise hand.
Yeah, and also check call because obviously he's gonna be betting a lot on flop with a6 or the turn, so fits pretty good for call as well.
Yeah, usually in the straight spots, even one thing that people will talk about a little bit with the straight situations is like, why do I want to block the straight? We're in a line where neither player has the straight really very much.
Hmm.
But in those situations, you still want to block the straight because the call range will be based around the straight too. Just like it's just the way that the sims work.
Yeah.
Even though neither player doesn't have the straight, it still prefers those hands. So the a6 feels like a very nice bluff candidate to me compared to that one. 5-6 calling the check raise. I think this is a flop where it's going to play pure call versus check raise, I would assume.
Yeah.
Um, and so now on the turn, the way that I would approach this, I would like to bet with hands that I'm less concerned about getting blown off my equity and
Hmm.
also have properties that make them fold more often. So hands with a heart, gutters over hearts, spades just because I'm not worried about getting blown off my equity, and then with my open enders probably lean a little bit more towards check, but I would still do some betting with 5-6 on the turn.
Yeah. Basically exactly what I was thinking in the game. So did check back, and now we have a fairly easy bluff on river. I think using 58 150 split here is pretty good. Maybe
Well,
it's
then
a
this
spot 58 only.
okay.
Um,
So press pause for a second here. So in this situation, in the weird check raise lines, I'm a pretty big advocate for just using single size
hmm.
because I just find it incredibly hard to split well. So I would play I probably would play 67 only here, but
Hmm.
58 only seems fine too. If I'm going to split, this hand seems like a really nice 150.
Hmm.
Um, fully unblocking the both front door and back door flush, and then the six, some slight relevancy to the straight with the six, and then the five kind of just unblocking. Like he's rarely going to have a five here, in the fold range or in
Yeah.
any range. So if I'm going to split, I'd mainly put this one 150, but I would just play single size 58 here.
Yeah. I mean, I assume the EV difference will be very small in this kind of spots, and I don't think we have that many 150 hands here. We could have some boats, some river straights, but that's about it. Wouldn't really check the rest of our trips that much, if ever.
This fish is getting you, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not known to having the highest win rate against fish. I do better against regs.
So maybe all of those hands where your logic is this is a fish, maybe that's not the right way to play. Just something to think about.
I think so. I think so. So a bit lower ace high board with 9-7. Some occasional bet, but more medium bet frequency, especially with the straight draw blocker. Much rather have either a lower card or just a higher kicker to bet, but occasional bet is fine.
It's funny with plane explains versus like structured course learning because plane explains are much more fun, right? Like you get to watch hands and talk about them and stuff, which is I think just inherently more fun. But it is a fundamentally worse way to learn.
Yeah.
I guess just briefly here, when you face the size, clearly you just play call only, so
Yep.
not really much to talk about. But it's pretty clearly like a worse way to learn, I think, because now you're forced to talk about the spots that are presented to you, um, and sometimes they're just like not that interesting or important. Whereas like when you break down, in the course format, you get to really go through the whole game tree and kind of build everything else out. This is a weird spot, but I would
Mm.
assume pure call.
Maybe a little bit of jamming as a bluff.
Okay. Well, so I guess, going along the line of thought with the Queen Seven, where we talked about how all the hands get in there for some raising or
Hmm.
some betting when the three flush is on there, that does kind of make sense to me. But here, wouldn't I rather just have a higher diamond? Wouldn't I rather just have like I don't know, maybe not, maybe. What's your logic on jamming with this hand?
I guess so. So in general, on the four straight situations, a lot of time the solvers would prefer using like just the straights for occasional shove, Though a bit different here since he overbet turn already and overbet river. I don't think he's not ever value betting as the six for this sizing, but we do block some of the nut straights. We do block some of the flushes. Um, so it feels like an occasional jam for me. But I could be persuaded with some other like a higher diamond. But it feels like a pretty good occasional jam, mainly call. Like I don't think we're ever folding with the six of diamonds, but occasional jam seems okay to me.
So let's actually talk about jam for a second. Because when I see this size turn this size river, what that says to me is I either have really a probably a flush or like 9-6 with a diamond kind of hand,
Hmm.
or I have like Jack 10, Jack 9. So when someone is that polar, like if I jam here, I'm expecting like over half his calls to be flushes, right?
Hmm.
Mainly flushes when he calls. So what's my bottom for value here?
It's gonna be a flush, I assume.
Any flush jams?
I assume so. Any flush jams.
Even versus 150, 150? Like he feels so incredibly polarized to me that I guess I really have like it feels like not many hands can jam in my shoes here unless it's like a good flush.
Mm.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm more worried about my frequency, so doing it
Sure, okay.
occasionally is probably fine. Because I don't really have the same problem you have when I'm racing. So, I snap in a 6-9.
Yeah, non-diamond 6-9, so
Yep.
but does that hand bet call? I feel like probably not.
Should have jammed. It's easy
Yeah.
tripper for value against the fish. I'm sizing up again because it's a wreck. Flawless logic.
I remember back in the day when I used to play different versus fish.
Mm. You don't anymore?
Not really. You just know all the answers, so like I mean, like if they're doing some really silly stuff, then of course, right? Like if
Mm.
someone defends way too tight, obviously I'm gonna raise all my buttons. Or if someone's like folding way too much to three bet, obviously I'm gonna three bet them way more. Or if like some simple things versus fish.
Mm-hmm.
But like post flop, I try to still just be like pretty balanced.
Okay.
Unless it's like, once you start to get some like good reads. But like if I'm like, oh, this is a fish, I still play like pretty solid until I like start to get some more concrete stuff. I don't just like start min betting away with my bottom pairs like you seem to do.
I'm not min betting my bottom pairs.
Nah, it's not a min bet with bottom pair.
That
You
was
even
a
talked
limp.
about it.
That was a limp pot. It's very
Yeah,
different.
yeah, it
Very
was
different.
still a min bet.
Well, haven't done much
All right,
work on
so,
the limp spots. So,
so 4-3. Nice to have a heart here. Obviously, 58% is our standard turn size, and we
mhm.
unblock the draw, so that all seems good.
Yeah. In general, the pair flops on turn is gonna be one of your higher frequency. Um, it's not like high frequency, but overall, since we're mainly using a larger single size, it's more polo low frequency, and those more like medium frequency. So you're just gonna mix in a lot of the non-paired, very low equity holdings into your turn betting, much more than the other spots. So
It's kind of interesting with Jack Deuce.
mainly call
Seems
some
like
raising. Something like Jack 4, I'll probably raise a bit more.
makes sense.
And it's an easy fold.
It's weird thinking about how low these stakes are compared to what I play now.
Mm.
Like it feels like normal poker when I'm watching, but I'm like, my preflop open is a buy-in here.
Yeah. I mean, most sites now are 1k max. It's only stars left that has higher stake heads up.
Ooh, 1K max is you hate to hear it.
With like 7 BB rake.
You definitely hate to hear that.
Yeah. So Jack 7 seems like a medium frequency bet with no backdoor flush draw. So occasionally just check to give up and occasional betting. And on turn, I imagine very low frequency bet, mainly jam river when we bet turn, but it's gonna be very rare betting Jack 7 on turn. I feel like.
Oof, this feels not good, man.
Mm,
Let's just pause this for a second. Don't we have enough like equity kind of hands to bluff here? Like 8-7, 10-8, 10-7, 7-5, 8-5, flush draws. I mean, yeah, like I guess like the worst hand you could bet here would be like a club hand, but like
mm.
this feels like if I was doing this play, you'd be berating me.
No, so again, sometimes on the pair flops, this also happens in 3-bet pots where we do barrel. It's not like no equity hands, but it's more like a, I guess you call it blocker oriented hand. So it would way more prefer to have a spade, like an offsuit jack high with a spade. Um, but I think this does happen, but it's like 5-10% of the time if it does happen. It could be just be a punt. But I do remember I did a 10% in game, something like that. But yeah, it's very cuspy and it could be just a blunder to bet.
Well, don't you worry. I'm gonna run this one
Okay,
just to make sure, just
thanks.
for the sake for science. What's the flop size again? We're doing this one?
So it's the ace paired, so it's
30,
30%.
30?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. I mean, I'm definitely with you. If you bet this turn, we're looking to jam
Yeah, that's what
river.
I'm thinking at least in game, but it could just be punt city. So yeah, even though double pair river, since I'm mainly betting a6 on turn for my value portion, and we
I
are
would
blocking some of the suited a6, I'm just gonna be jamming still, since it's
I
a low
wouldn't even bet
frequency on turn.
I wouldn't even bet flop that much, honestly.
Yeah, flops also is fairly low, probably half or 40% at most. But yeah, we got it through, so it's a good play.
Yep, that's some high level learning there.
Yep.
This will work out where I think my machine will solve it down by the time we're done here, so we can conclude on
Hmm.
the Jack 7. What size did we go in the King 5 on the left?
I went
On the
150 on river, 6-7 turn,
don't
150 river.
don't we use 225 there? Oh
Two,
no, sorry, it
no.
was probe. I thought it
Yeah,
was
it's a
check check.
limp pot again, so it's a bit weird.
Limp pot. Okay. Yeah, we haven't done too much work on limp pots.
Yeah, lasted 2 days or whatever it was.
42% pot here.
Yeah, and most vulnerable pocket pair above the 6, so with the backdoor, I assume I'm mainly betting 7s here. Almost pure. So again, the king high boards unimpaired with the Broadway higher frequency, and sort of having a lower 10 on blocking a lot of floats and straight draws. I assume I'm doing fair chunk of betting still, like 60% with 10-4. A bit less if I have something like 10-9, 10-8. Um, yeah.
When when we're using the 42% size, that makes you feel like this is a little more of a check than like a
Mm,
33% size.
yeah. And also
Because I, I would
if
do
you use
I would do a good
30%,
chunk of check here.
yeah, but if you use 30% of those boards, the rainbow ones like King 10, Jack 10, rainbow, you can actually range bet them. Um, so that's something I used to do. But yeah, for 42, a bit more check, and then yeah, easy call on river.
Just going for some thin value
Yes, I think it's too large sizing for a size, has to block.
or some thick value, as you guys would call it.
Yeah, that used to bother you so much.
Well, it really did. When we first started working together, like, oh, some thick value. I'm like, wait, this is thin. You're like, no, it's thick. And I'm like, why is it thick?
Because it is.
Could you guys ever even really explain why?
No, it was just something we used to say, and then, it stuck.
Like, I don't understand why this is thick value.
Give us a break, it's our second language.
Actually, you guys do speak some pretty good English for.
Thanks. For Euros.
It's better than my Swedish, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously limped pot, so it's kind of weird, but I assume this is just bet bet.
Yeah. So again,
Oh, weird.
similar how I talk about the queen high boards, we bet a bit more of our top pairs on these kind of straight boards, so even our weaker top pairs there's still a fair chunk of betting. Not really getting any spots. Okay.
Well, here we go. We have a spot.
Yeah. So I'm unblocking all the pairs, and it's a wreck that's gonna probe to or bet too much of his pairs. I go for a check raise. Pure.
So can you just pause for a second here, real quick, because this hand's obviously just blasting away.
Mhm.
Um, so when people use really big sizes on the flop, I've noticed that the nutted hands like 7-6 trap much more often, right? So like,
Mhm.
so if he goes small here, I would almost always check raise. But when he goes full pot, do we look to maybe put some traps in there, or are you just going, this guy's a fish, I need to stack him?
So again, what I've seen from Rex in these kind of situations, um, they bet too big of a sizing for like too wide a value. So he will bet almost all his 8x here, 9x here, maybe some 5x as well. And he's not really going to be folding to the raise. So I'm unblocking all of those. I'm just very happy to always be raising. Again, if I was trying to play more prop against a reg using that size, I would definitely look to do more trapping with 7-6. But I also have the 7-6 with no backdoor flush draw, so it also makes me leaning a bit more to raising. But yeah, it's just a wreck, so I'm just going for it since what I've seen, they will bet too wide on flop for value, even for full pot. And again on turn, I think you could go Geo here, but I feel like again, also against Iraq, they tend to like go a bit crazy against smaller sizing, block sizing. So I will go like a very small block size here and hope he just goes crazy against it essentially. But maybe
I like
Geo
block
here.
here anyway. I
Yeah,
mean, block is probably just good here anyway. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Got him.
Wow.
Yeah, that's sort of what I mean today. How against the block size they tend to just go very crazy. That
Yeah.
happens a lot in 4-bet pots.
Heads up's pretty dead, I gotta say.
Yeah, tough pull. A6, occasional check raise flop, mainly call and now turn, pure calling. You could potentially raise with ace of spades, but I think it might be too strong to check raise a6 with ace of spades there. But
Yeah, I usually go unpaired. Like on the turn check raise, it doesn't always work,
mhm,
but you can just pause for a second. Actually, it doesn't always work, but usually you just want to go strongest uh equity that can't quite check call, or is like right in the cusp of check call.
yeah,
And and then what I have found is the solver will work in like a few very specific non-spade hands here that then give it some ability to bluff on the river. I think that a kind of hand here might be something like Queen 6 or like Ace 10, or just like there's a couple occasional hands that get in there to be able to bluff some four spade runouts, but your
mhm,
bluffs mainly you're mainly just geo, some straights, most of your flushes, and then actually I had a question for you.
mhm.
So I've seen some very different solutions with how often I check raise my flush on the turn when the turn completes the flush. My general rule of thumb has been if I have a flush and it completes, sorry, on turns that complete flushes and I'm in the big blind SRP, I check raise the flushes about 2/3 of the time. My ones that have certain properties that make it check call, I check call more, et cetera, et cetera. Is that roughly a good goalpost, or do you do less or more?
I think I do around half, maybe also up to 2/3. And again, the properties I'm looking for to check raise more is like a high-low flush, more racing. My absolute best ones with like a two medium or two high cards, more calling, and also if I have a pair plus the flush, more calling in general. But yeah, probably roughly around half. It also depends on the sizing you face, right? But yeah, at least half of the flushes I use to check raise turn, I would say.
So yeah, so I was looking at a sim earlier today, and it was like the flushes check raise like 28% of the time or something, and I was kind of
Mm-hmm.
shocked.
Mm-hmm.
Because I usually thought it was like half to 2/3 or even closer just to 2/3 in general, maybe even 3/4 in some spots.
Yeah.
So I was just surprised to see the flushes chat that much. Anyway, let's just see how it happens in the river here.
So facing Orbit, I feel like I feel like I'd much rather have a spade plus a straight blocker here than the ace. Um, because in general these hands are pretty good call hands, right? So if there was no straight available on a flush turn and then he bears river, I have um, like the a6 here. I would probably look to do some calling, but here I feel like I much prefer to have the straight blocker plus a flush. I'm also preferring having the 10 over something like an 8, I think, with the spade. So this feels more mainly fold, maybe still occasionally call, but maybe pure fold as well. But yeah.
Okay, so one of the reasons I like pure fold here is the three flush spot when the flush completes, the bluffs in position are way more likely to have an ace in them. So
Mm-hmm.
this isn't like most spots where he can't have an ace really that's bluffing. Like he can definitely be bluffing with an ace here.
Yeah.
So the ace actually is bad. And then I think I would rather have the like a I would rather have my spade if I was going to bluff. I'd rather have a higher spade that's the non-paired spade because I think the 6x of spades is more likely to check turn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then within my calls, I would way rather have just like the queen of spades or ten of spades
Yeah.
or ace of spades
Yeah.
than the six of spades here. So it seems like a pure fold. I got some bad news for you, by the way,
Oh, oh.
Fabian. We ran this hand,
Which hand was
and
it again?
the Jack seven of diamonds,
Oh, it was punt
and
on turn, right?
there is no turn betting going on in that. Just a quick punt on the turn.
Does it
And
does it bet any of the lower equity hands on turn? Or is it just equity again?
it is there's a little non-equity,
Mm.
but not for some reason like queen three suited. I don't know why. And then like a little bit of like king five,
Mm.
little bit, but
Yeah. I mean that was what I was thinking,
yeah,
a little bit of some hand like that, but I guess I chose the wrong one. Was it a big EV error?
no, it's close. I think.
Okay, I can live with that.
Yeah, you lose like a couple blinds,
Okay.
so not the end of the world, but
Okay.
yeah. All right, seems good.
Yep.